The story of the USS Liberty is one of the most contentious episodes in American naval history. On June 8, 1967, the American intelligence ship found itself in the crosshairs of a nation it considered a friend. The USS Liberty, designated Active 5, was not a warship but a floating listening post. Its mission was to monitor the communications of nations in the volatile Eastern Mediterranean. The ship was operating in international waters, approximately 14 nautical miles off the coast of the Sinai Peninsula. The six-day war between Israel and its Arab neighbors was raging, a conflict of stunning speed and consequence. The Liberty's crew, mostly technicians and specialists, were observers, not combatants. That morning, the clear blue sky offered no hint of the violence to come. Throughout the morning, Israeli reconnaissance aircraft repeatedly flew over the American vessel. The pilots circled the ship, sometimes flying so low that the American sailors could see their faces. Survivors later testified that the ship's large American flag prominently. The hull numbers, Qatar 5, were freshly painted and clearly visible on the ship's bow. Despite these clear markings, the official Israeli account would later claim the ship was unidentified. At approximately 2:00 p.m. local time, the tranquility was shattered. Unmarked Dassault Mirage the thread, fighter jets screamed out of the sky, their cannons blazing. The initial strafing runs tore through the ship's antennae and communication arrays. This effectively deafened the ship, cutting it off from the outside world. Sailors on deck were caught completely by surprise, with no time to seek cover. The jets made pass after pass, relentlessly pounding the lightly armed vessel. Rockets and cannon fire ripped through the hull and superstructure. The crew desperately tried to signal the attackers, to make them understand they were firing on an American ship. But the attacks did not cease. In fact, they intensified. Following the jets, Israeli Super Mystère fighters continued the assault with napalm. The ship's deck became an inferno, trapping and injuring many of the crew. As the aerial attack subsided, a new threat emerged from the sea. 3 Israeli motor torpedo boats were spotted approaching at high speed. The Liberty's captain, William McGonigal, ordered the remaining machine guns to be manned. The torpedo boats opened fire with cannons and machine guns. The crew of the Liberty, already devastated, fought back with a handful of 50 caliber machine guns. Then at 2:41 p.m., one of the torpedo boats fired a torpedo. It struck the Liberty on the starboard side, directly in the ship's research spaces. The blast tore a 40-foot hole in the hull, instantly killing dozens of men below deck. These were the technicians and cryptologists at the heart of the ship's intelligence mission. The ship immediately listed to starboard, taking on massive amounts of water. With the ship grievously wounded and many dead or dying, the crew prepared to abandon ship. Life rafts were lowered into the water, a desperate bid for survival. According to numerous survivor testimonies, the Israeli torpedo boats then began to circle and fire upon these life rafts. This act, a grave violation of the laws of war, remains one of the most horrifying claims from that day. The Israeli government has always denied that its forces deliberately targeted the life rafts. A single, desperate radio message finally managed to get through the jamming. A radio operator, his equipment damaged, jury-rigged an antenna to broadcast a distress call. The message reached the U.S. 6th Fleet, which dispatched aircraft to defend the Liberty. Upon learning that American aircraft were en route, the Israeli attackers abruptly broke off their assault. The attack had lasted for nearly 2 hours. In its wake, 34 American servicemen were dead, and 171 were wounded. USS Liberty was one of the most heavily damaged ships to survive a single engagement in U.S. naval history. Captain McGonagall severely wounded himself, was later awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroism. His leadership and courage were credited with saving the ship from sinking. The official explanation from Israel was that the attack was a tragic case of mistaken identity. They claimed their forces had mistaken the Liberty for an Egyptian horse transport ship, the El Qusayr. This explanation has been the official position of both the U.S. and Israeli governments ever since. However, for the survivors and many high-ranking U.S. officials, this story was impossible to believe. They pointed to the clear weather and the ship's prominent American flag. They questioned how a slow-moving intelligence ship could be mistaken for a much smaller, older transport. They highlighted the prolonged nature of the attack, far beyond a simple mistake. The jamming of American radio frequencies suggested a deliberate intent to prevent communication. The U.S. Navy's own court of inquiry was hastily conducted. Its full report remains classified to this day. Suspicion. The court's public summary supported the mistaken identity narrative, but omitted troubling testimony. Survivors were ordered by their superiors to never speak about the attack to the media or their families. This gag order remained in effect for years, burying the story from public view. Many researchers and former officials have since come forward to challenge the official story. Admiral Thomas Moore, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was a vocal critic. He stated unequivocally that Israel's intent was to sink the ship and leave no survivors. Secretary of State Dean Rusk was also deeply skeptical of the Israeli explanation. So, if the attack was deliberate, what was the motive? One prominent theory is that Israel wanted to prevent the U.S. from learning about its military plans, specifically the impending invasion of the Golan Heights, which was Syrian territory. The Liberty, with its sophisticated listening equipment, would have intercepted Israeli communications about the operation. By eliminating the Liberty, Israel could maintain the element of surprise. Another theory suggests the attack was intended to be a false flag operation. Under this scenario, Israel hoped the attack would be blamed on Egypt. This could have drawn the United States directly into the war on Israel's side. This theory, while explosive, is considered less likely by most historians. A third theory points to alleged war crimes being committed by Israeli forces in the Sinai. Liberty might have overheard evidence of these actions, providing a motive for its destruction. Declassified documents have added layers of complexity to the event. NSA intercepts of Israeli pilot communications show confusion in the initial moments. However, other intercepts reportedly confirmed the pilots identified the ship as American before the torpedo attack. These crucial tapes have never been fully declassified by the United States. The political context of the Cold War played a significant role in the aftermath. President Lyndon B. Johnson's administration was keen to avoid a confrontation with Israel. Israel was a crucial strategic ally in a region of growing Soviet influence. A public dispute would have undermined American foreign policy objectives. Therefore, the decision was made to accept the apology and the compensation offered by Israel. The story of the Liberty was effectively swept under the rug for geopolitical reasons. For the survivors, this official acceptance of the mistake theory was a profound betrayal. They had not only survived a horrific attack, but were now being told their experience was not the truth. The USS Liberty Veterans Association was formed to keep the memory of the attack alive. They have fought for decades for a full, independent congressional investigation. To this day, that investigation has never happened. The attack on the USS Liberty remains a wound that has never properly healed. It exists in a gray zone between a tragic mistake and a deliberate act of war. The evidence is conflicting, and key documents remain hidden from public view. The official narrative satisfies governments, but not the men who were there. Their testimony speaks of a clear sky, a visible flag, and an unrelenting, merciless assault. Truth, for them, is not hidden in classified files, but etched in their memories. The incident serves as a stark reminder of the brutal complexities of international espionage. It shows how quickly the lines between friend and foe can blur in the fog of war. The ship itself, the USS Liberty, was saved from sinking but was too damaged to be repaired. It was eventually sold for scrap, its story sailing into history. But the questions surrounding that day, in June 1967, refused to be scrapped. Was it a mistake born of chaos? Or was it a calculated strike, hidden by a convenient lie? The answer depends on who you ask, the governments or the survivors. The hidden truth of the USS Liberty remains just that, hidden. The incident began with Israeli Air Force Mirage jets conducting reconnaissance. Sailors sunbathing on the deck waved to the low-flying Israeli pilots. They had no reason to suspect hostility from a nation considered a close ally. The ship's mission was so secret that even other U.S. Navy commanders in the region were not fully briefed. This lack of communication would prove fatal in the hours to come. The first cannon shell struck the ship's primary communication antennas. The goal was clearly to isolate the Liberty before the main attack began. Within minutes, the ship's ability to call for help was almost completely neutralized. The crew's response was one of disbelief, then disciplined emergency action. Fire control parties rushed to extinguish the napalm-fueled fires. Medics worked tirelessly to treat the overwhelming number of casualties. The torpedo's impact created a scene of utter devastation in the research compartments. Water flooded in, turning a top-secret intelligence center into a tomb. Captain McGonigal, despite a severe leg injury, remained in command on the bridge. He navigated the crippled ship, steering it away from the coast. The Israeli torpedo boats circled the listing vessel like sharks. Their machine gun fire raked the decks, targeting anyone who moved. One of the most damning claims is that the attackers machine gunned the deployed life rafts. This act suggested an intention to eliminate all witnesses. The eventual rescue came from the 6th Fleet, but only after critical delays. Initial rescue flights launched from us, carriers were mysteriously recalled by Washington. This recall order remains a subject of intense controversy and speculation. Some believe the White House feared escalating the conflict into a superpower confrontation. When help finally arrived, the scene was one of carnage and heroism. The ship had suffered a casualty rate of over 70%. Survivors were later decorated for their bravery, but in quiet ceremonies. The official narrative was carefully managed from the very beginning. Israel paid millions in compensation to the families of the dead and to the wounded. For many, this was seen as an admission of guilt, not just of a mistake. The ship's logbooks and other crucial evidence were immediately classified. Over the years, journalists and historians have chipped away at the official secrecy. Books and documentaries have presented the survivors' side of the story. They argue that the attack was a calculated act of aggression. The motive remains the central puzzle of the USS Liberty incident. Was it to hide the Golan Heights invasion, as is most commonly believed? Or was there an even darker secret that needed to be protected? The legacy of the Liberty is a cautionary tale about the nature of alliances. It highlights the potential for betrayal even between friendly nations. The story is a testament to the sailors who endured the unendurable. They faced enemy fire and then a wall of official silence. Their fight for recognition continues to this day. The hidden truth of June 8, 1967, may never be officially acknowledged. But for those who seek it, the evidence points to a disturbing conclusion. The attack on the USS Liberty was not a mistake.